And we're off.
Oh,
We are
we're
live.
live. We're live. We're
Yeah.
live. This is a very special Manic and Chill for several reasons. One, we haven't done one in, I don't know, is Christmas? Was Christmas the last time we did one?
Last time we did one was, yeah, it was a while ago. Probably right after the season ish. No, you know what? Might have been in like mid-January, something like that, maybe,
Yeah, I'm
potentially.
disappointed in us. It's been a while. It's been a while. But we had some stuff come out in the interim, which means since the last time we've done one, we had the DLF Dynasty Draft Guide, 2022 Dynasty Draft Guide come out. If you heard about that or not. Did you
Yeah,
hear
we'll
about that?
talk. I did hear about it. I actually participated a little bit and not nearly as much work as Shane, but I did contribute some content for that. And Shane edited what, half the guide? Seemed like you were the one that
Uh,
was the on the editing team for the most part.
Yeah, I had a lot of help, honestly. The partners, Ken Kelly, Addison. Well, Addison's not a partner, but the Ken Kelly, Ken Moody, Addison all helped too, formatting and editing and catching mistakes. Got to write a little bit on it, so that was fun. I got to trash old running backs, which is always, I think that's just something I have to do on a daily basis to feel good about myself. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and hopefully our readers liked it.
Well, yeah, let's get to it. I mean, we planned on doing this show. We really don't have a script that we're going to go off of. We don't have a show sheet, which we haven't. We never had a show sheet in 3 years of doing Manic and Chill. That's why they call it Manic and Chill. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of the guide content. We won't go through it like exhaustively. This isn't going to be like an hour, 2 hour show just talking about the guide, but we'll throw some highlights. It comes with your DLF subscription. So if you go to the website and click on the tab where it says draft guide, there's actually two draft guides in there. Shane pointed out that it says draft guide, but when you click on it, there's actually two. There's a dynasty draft guide, which we'll talk about, and then a rookie draft guide. So that'll help you in your upcoming rookie drafts. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just start. What would you say is the biggest highlight for you going through the dynasty draft guide? Like what stood out to you?
I liked the leverage trades because I like anything around trading. Obviously, it's I guess probably if you did a poll on Twitter, that'd probably be one of the top two things that people like. I think people like drafting and trading and then winning, maybe in that order. So anything revolving around trading and being able to squeeze out a little additional assets in trades is something that I love. So I love that you wrote that. I got to read through that. That was fun for me. Um, and then, like I said, I got to trash old running backs as always. So that's always fun for me because I just did a little look back over the last 3 years for running back data, running back ones and running back twos. And not surprisingly, what I found is, yeah, this is a young man's game at the running back position.
Yeah, I mean it's a unique time I think with running backs right now because we've talked about it on prior shows, but we have the 2017 guys that are still hanging around. They're still holding their top, 20 value in terms of the running back position. Yet we kind of all feel that the floor could fall out on those guys at any point to where the timing with that, along with an insanely hyped 2023 class, it really feels like if you can hit those running backs correctly at this point of their career, like on the down slope of their career arc, if you can have the right ones as they kind of ride off into the sunset, you can do it very cheaply, I think. And we did get a question kind of about this. I mean, I'm going to throw it up there because we're going to take some questions too. But Tony E187, Shane, any running backs you're targeting late first, early second, I think he probably means rookie drafts. And he might mean single quarterback. I'm not sure. But let's just talk. Let's keep it broad. Let's talk Superflex. We've already done a couple rookie drafts that we're in, that we've already had the drafts. And it gets a little ugly when you get past like the 103, 104, and it's all receivers. You're really reaching if you're drafting prior to the NFL draft on the quarterbacks, because honestly, you could take a couple quarterbacks and they don't even go in the first round. You could take running backs and they go in the third or fourth round. So, I mean, this question right there, you're sitting, let's just say the back half of a super flex draft, 107 to 112. I assume you're probably willing to make trades and buy some of these veteran running backs and just hope that you get a year or two out of them, don't you think?
100%. 100%. I see Isaiah Spiller going off the board in multiple mocks and real live drafts at 111, 110, 109, 112. I do not have enough conviction in him for that. Now, if he was falling to 204, 205, I'd be all over him. But, and I got this question on Twitter earlier too, asking basically, would you trade a late first round pick for Eli Mitchell? Yes. Even with all the risk involved with Eli Mitchell, at least I know he's good at football, right? I've seen it on the NFL football field. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things that can happen, but at least he's shown it on the pro level where a lot of these rookie running backs, man, we just have no idea who's going to be good. I mean, you were talking before we jumped on, right? There's going to be a bunch of them that you want to take shots on. So if you have like 5 picks in the second round, you'll feel good when you hit on 2 of them or hit on 1 of them. But I don't know which ones it's going to be. It was a month ago at this time before the combine, whenever that was, Tyler Algier and Kyron Williams looked like they were going to be guys that were going to be sneaky values. Now you're looking at Rashad White might be a guy that probably is at 112. Again, it's going to depend on draft capital, but if I'm drafting a rookie at the back of the first, I'm guessing Rashad White if he's still there.
Yeah, I mean, I think before the NFL draft, it's really hard to kind of determine how you're going to rank running back 3 through literally 20. There's a lot of good ones. I've talked about it on Twitter multiple times. I love this running back class for, hey, I have a bunch of seconds, thirds, and fourth round picks. I need to add a bunch of bodies to my team. I love this class. I think you're going to get a wide array of different types, a wide array of different types of players, and they're going to go basically from late round 3 to round 6. You're going to get a ton of running backs drafted. I think we're going to probably see up to 30 running backs drafted this year. And a lot of them are going to be clustered in that range. Now, most of them are going to, the expectation here, and I kind of want to explain this too, because I talked about this on Twitter. The expectation is not that they're ever starters, ever. If you luck into a starter, if you luck into an Isaiah or Elijah Mitchell, then that's a 5% outcome. Like, that's not my expectation. My expectation is I can draft a bunch of guys with fresh legs that are come into depth charts, and they're going to get shots if there's ever an injury, if there's ever a player that gets traded, cut, whatever. Like, they're going to get shots in small windows. And all I can hope for is that I have opportunities to play them during those periods of time. And I've talked about this many times about RB2s. RB2s are just placeholders. It's valuable to have a guy on your team that is going to get 250, 300 touches in a year. But if it's RB15, that's not winning you your league. It's basically just keeping up with the Joneses. Everyone else that has a couple running backs starting weekly, all you're doing is keeping up. You're just keeping up at a little more of a feel-good level because you don't have to work the wire week to week to week. You don't have to search your bench going, oh, the 2 guys ahead of this player are going to be out, so maybe I can start him this week. Like, you don't have to deal with that scramble, but I'm hoping to add a bunch of reserves, a bunch of next man up. There's some guys in this class that are under 200 pounds. That could be the J.D. McKissicks, the Naheem Hines, those types. I don't love those as much, but they're there if you want them. Like, they're going to be occupying late third, early fourth round picks, maybe some even higher. You have like James Cook, probably is going to go like the mid second round. I mean, that's probably the high end. But there's just a lot of different types of running backs that I'm interested in this season. But again, it's not because I think they're going to become Elijah Mitchell. It's because I want to roster 20 of them or 15 of them. I mean, you've seen some of my rosters, Shane, where literally 70% of my roster spots are running backs. And that usually means I'm very concentrated and very top heavy and strong at the other positions. Like, I'll have 12 players on my roster, and that makes up my stud receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends. And then my other 18 roster spots are running backs. And people are like, that's so weird that you design it that way, but it's a construction thing. So it gets back to Tony's question. Like, let's say you already have a team where you like your construction outside of maybe you're short a running back. Elijah Mitchell is your only top 30 running back. You send a 108 for Nick Chubb, something like that, right? Easy.
I'd send every 108 I could find in my I'd send it from multiple leagues. Like, you could just have all my 108s in all my leagues. Yes.
Okay, easy. So going down a little bit further, would you send 108 for Zeke?
Man, so it's hard because I'm Philly, so I'm trained to hate Zeke, and my bias against him is, I think it's well documented. It's hard to take that out of it. I think He can be an RB2 this year, right? Was he an RB1 last year? I don't even know what he was. I assume he wasn't.
He probably wouldn't have been if everyone would have stayed healthy. But there's injuries.
Well, no one stays healthy at running back, so that's
that's kind of the
works out.
point. Is I don't necessarily look at points per game as much for running backs over a long period of time, right? Over if I'm looking at a sample size of a decade, then I'm going to use points per game. But when I'm looking at one singular season upcoming, there's value in a guy that I go, okay, he's not that great, but if there's any running back in this league that I'm pretty sure can go out and play at least 15 games and handle at least 275 or 300 touches, it's Ezekiel Elliott. And it's probably Ezekiel Elliott until he's out of the NFL.
I'll tell you what, instead of Zeke, I'll get someone that's not also doesn't get as much love, but I know I'll get a little more utility from. How about David Montgomery? Because I know the community doesn't like him, especially. So I think I could maybe, if I could get, even if I have to throw in a little bit more, maybe I'll go make a move for David Montgomery.
Yeah, I think the weird thing with Zeke is he's RB24 in the ADP right now. I mean, he just keeps falling and falling and falling to the point where I would think there would be people that would take like James Conner or Leonard Fournette over him, but I think they're in the same mold where it's a 1 to 2 year bet. That's it. All you're betting on is A, health, and B, the durability to handle the workload that they have in the past. That's it. I don't care what happens after 2022. If I get anything in 2023 with these guys, great. But I think this is a roster construction thing. I look at some of my teams and go, you know what? I've traded away all of my higher end running backs. I've traded away most of my shares of Cam Akers or J.K. Dobbins or Antonio Gibson. A lot of those I've already been flipping for like 23 first plus. And you really can't do that now because of the market on the 23 first. But I think the range to buy is just, hey, I need a running back on this team. And I don't think you can get those high end guys for late first in this class. But I do think you can get Zeke, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, maybe Aaron Jones, maybe David Montgomery, maybe Josh Jacobs, maybe. But I think you're pushing it there. I think you almost have to go to the very bottom. I don't care what happens. You know what I mean? I don't care what happens after 2022. It's a roster construction thing. I'm going into the season with 1 or 2 elite running backs. When I say elite, like top 24. That's it. I'll take my chances. I'll just add a bunch of bodies outside of those guys and see what happens. So,
yeah, I mean that's much more palatable. Yeah, there you go. I think that's a word, palatable, than paying everything in sight for Jonathan Taylor and praying every week that he doesn't tear an ACL.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we've never been big on once a rookie or once a running back hits their like market peak. That's the last thing I want to buy. Even if they're good, like I don't think I've ever made a deal in Dynasty where it's like, you know what, I need to go get the RB1. I'm going to give you 3 firsts. I've never made a deal like that in my entire Dynasty career, and I've played for almost 9 years.
So I'll step out of process more often than you will. There have been leagues where I've gone, you know what, this is a title run. I'm going to go ahead and pay out of the nose. But also I'll make sure I have the assets to that if it goes bad, that I can flip some stuff and rebuild the team. But in a general strategy, yeah, no, I don't want to be paying a lot for running backs.
So going back to the draft guide real quick, I mean, you mentioned the leverage piece with the leverage trades. What was your takeaway? Because I mean, obviously I wrote the leverage trade piece. It's something that I use, I mean, as often as I can. I mean, a lot of the trades I've got done in the past have followed some sort of format. So, I mean, people might think, oh, well, you're kind of giving away your trade secrets here, but I'm really not. You can still follow this. That's why I really wasn't worried about putting it out to the public because, it's a process thing. I know there are people in my leagues that look at that, the 80-40 trade, for instance, right? I mean, that's the typical where I'm giving you an asset that's worth, let's call it $100. I'm getting back 2 assets, one probably at the same position that I'm giving you. And then I'm getting back a piece that's worth like $40 back. So I'm getting an $80 piece and a $40 piece for a $100 piece. I'm getting more money back, but I'm also getting now 2 pieces that I have to find a way. If I ever want to cash it in, I have to be able to combine it. It's not dollars and cents at that point. It's 2 players. So I can't easily take those 2 players and give them back to somebody else and get 1 player if I wanted to a week later. The reason I make those trades is I try to find places in the market where the $100 player I give you and the $80 player you give me, I can see a range of outcomes where they're very similar assets. That's how a lot of times those trades go down. But when you read that, I know there are people that go, oh, and I've heard you say it before. If it's like a start 10, a lot of times I think you'll just take the best player in the deal. You know what I mean? And you'll worry about, I can fill that extra roster spot maybe with something off the waiver wire. So, I mean, what was your thoughts on that? I mean, is that something you've tried before? Or, I mean, what were your takeaways from the leverage piece? Because I know it's not for everybody.
No, well, so my favorite thing is, and it's because its beauty is in its simplicity and just how easy it is to do and pull off, is the 2-for-2 trade. And this is something I'm surprised you didn't call it the pivot trade, but whatever you want to call it, you want to call it the 2-for-2, that's fine. But where we go, okay, well, I have this player. He happens to be in the same range as another player, but the market doesn't value him the same way. For whatever reason, the market values the easy example was T. Higgins in the offseason. I already consider it the season. T. Higgins in the offseason and CD Lamb earlier, right? We had the CD Lamb was going off the board, and he is again as the wide receiver 3 in drafts, where T. Higgins is a little lower, probably wide receiver 12. Scoring wise, that's not where they are though. And you could look, you could spin a narrative of why CD Lamb has higher upside and all that good stuff, but you could equally use his own numbers against him if you want to use actual analytical data. Anyway, getting back to that. So that trade, anytime you can make that trade where you can go, all right, well, these two players are actually tiered very similarly, but the market doesn't realize that for whatever reason. The market, for whatever biases we have, we love AJ Brown. So can I pivot off AJ Brown, get a first round draft pick and a wide receiver that's within AJ Brown's range and trade and give up a second, and that way just build my roster that way.
Yeah, I think that's one where you can do this very easily at wide receiver. You just have to find a willing participant that you can move back the other side. I mean, the example I gave was Jalen Waddle and the 110 in this draft for DJ Moore and a 2023 first. This was obviously, that idea specifically was before Tyreek Hill went to Miami. I don't think you could probably pull that off now, but I think you could probably insert like CD Lamb into that trade and potentially get that done. And really all it is, you would agree, you send a 110 for a 23 first, you get just a bunch of laugh emojis back, like that. You couldn't have done that earlier in the year. You definitely can't do that now that people are starting to see drafts. But if you send somebody CD Lamb for DJ Moore and you get that in your inbox, yeah, you might be giving away CD Lamb, but you can kind of tell yourself a story where DJ Moore could to do as good as CD Lamb, right? And you don't need him to be as good or better. You need him to be within a close enough gap to where what you're getting with the second piece, like you mentioned, is higher than what you're losing in the first part of the trade. And clearly the 110 and a 23 first is a massive gap. Especially if it ends up being the 110 next year, you're still probably profiting. But man, you have the ambiguity of that pick could be the 103 or the 104. And you literally won that trade between those two pieces. You 3 or 4x that trade. You know what I mean? If you got the 2023 103 for the 110 this year, I mean, you're laughing to the bank with that. And, you would accept, okay, maybe I downgraded from a wide receiver 1 to a wide receiver 2, but you could accept that, given the gap on the other piece. So I think that's an interesting one. You just have to I find that those deals fluctuate with the market. You need to be giving away the player that I know everybody in my league wants. It can't just be, oh, well, DLF trade calculator said this player is worth 2 times this player.
No, and
it only matters if the market thinks that, not people in your league.
And that's the beautiful thing, is the market's always going to pick players that it likes more than other players based off nothing other than that player's fun. And, I've fallen into that trap. I fell into that trap with Juju Smith-Schuster. If I, pulled back and gone, maybe let me look at this a little more logically, rather than the fact that Juju's just fun and he's a TikTok dance king and all that good stuff. Like, whatever the reasoning, there's just certain players we gravitate towards, right? Like DK Metcalf happens to be one of those guys. Like, I thought his market value would have dropped significantly after losing Russell Wilson, but for whatever reason it hasn't. So that shows me, well, he might be a guy, as much as I love him, like the market does, maybe I need to move off of him. Because if anyone's going to have a bad year, it's probably going to be DK Metcalf. And I could probably buy back in next year after, a year of him being tied to Drew Lock or whatever nonsense they have out there.
Yeah, that's an interesting one with DK because I was big on buying DJ Moore because a lot of the, if you really dig into the numbers, DJ Moore has been really, really good. He's just never had a quarterback. But I do think part of his value was being kind of milked into the fact that he might have been able to get Deshaun Watson. And then when he didn't, now you're kind of looking at, okay, well, he's definitely looking at a 2022 with either Sam Darnold or a rookie. 2023, he might be looking at a brand new regime. They may draft another quarterback. You're probably looking at like a 2-year window where it's going to be an uphill battle again for DJ Moore, unless they draft like Kenny Pickett and by year 2, he's good. Year 2, he can sustain, above average efficiency and you're fine. But that don't really want to bet on that based on what we know with this class. But it could be the same with DK. I feel some of DK's value right now is still being held because literally there's a narrative where he could get traded to the Packers or the Chiefs. And if that happened tomorrow, he goes from like wide receiver 10 to wide receiver 3 overnight. You know what I mean? Like you would be able to now probably get any other receiver in Dynasty for DK if he got traded to Green Bay. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, but here's the thing. So, and this is where you have to remember properly value players. That's true of a lot of receivers. If AJ Brown gets traded somewhere, you know what I mean? Like all the scuttle is that he wants a lot of money. Debo gets traded. Well, Debo's already high, but
yeah, not Debo.
Not Debo. But AJ Brown gets traded to the Packers, just for instance. Any of these teams you could talk yourself into. And all of a sudden it's, oh, well, now his volume is going to be 140. So there's a lot of players in that range where we can talk ourselves into what could be, even though we've never actually, I don't want to say we haven't seen it, but we haven't actually seen the heights of what we think we've seen. If that makes sense.
So DK and AJ Brown both have wide receiver 1 finishes already. That is part of what we have to acknowledge with their dynasty value. With the current wide receiver market in the NFL, anytime one of these guys comes up for free agency, this discussion is going to have to be had. Now, does that mean that AJ Brown or DK Metcalf are actually on the trade block? They could actually get traded. All of that is just speculation. But I feel that part of their value is being held for that exact reason. When in reality, it's probably smart to say, okay, I can find somebody that's going to trade me, Deontay Johnson plus for DK Metcalf. I should probably just take it because odds are both of them don't have a home run quarterback situation in the next 2 years. So what's the difference? You know what I mean? Like I'll reassess in 2 years if that situation changes, but I really don't want to be paying for the 20% of DK's value that is being baked in on the fact that he could get traded, because anybody could get traded at any time. Anybody could get hurt at any time. I mean, you just don't know. But I feel the market is a little hesitant to push those specific players down for that reason, because there is scuttlebutt about DK getting moved. Yeah. And I think we would not be shocked with this offseason if we were to wake up one day and that were to happen. So just worth a conversation. We had some other comments. I'm going to put these up there. Corey says, shout out, Corey. Hey, Ryan McDowell. Honored to have Ryan McDowell tune into Manic and Chill. So what's up, Ryan? Here's one, Shane. David Shank, good evening. Top wide receivers in this class: Wilson, Burks, London. Who are your personal favorites? I'll let you answer your personal favorites. Then I'll kind of go into my thoughts on what I think about this receiver class as a whole.
So, I mean, it's interesting he grabbed those three, and it's probably because that's the top tier, right? That's I think, in some order. What's funny is we get closer to the NFL draft, I'm gravitating more towards Garrett Wilson because he feels like the most secure. He's going to be a top 15 pick somewhere, where Treylon Burks, who I love, and I think is an AJ Brown type player, except durable, is probably like let's say as a fan is my favorite player, but I'm thinking it's Garrett Wilson. That's the guy I'm starting to gravitate towards based off mock drafts and grinding the mocks and Mock Draftable, like all those draft sites that you go to and you keep seeing which wide receivers are usually in the first 2 to go off the board. It's usually always Garrett Wilson. A little lower than that, I love George Pickens, Jameson Williams, Jahan Dotson, like that whole cluster, just all of them. Treylon Burks, I like Burks' too. Burks could end up in a really good spot. He could end up because, we have Green Bay and Kansas City, who have multiple picks in the bottom of the first round, which could really push Treylon Burks up. But if I had to choose one, I'm really leaning towards Wilson lately.
Yeah, I mean, I would lean with you. I would agree if I had a pick and I had to choose pre-NFL draft with what we know right now, I'd probably go with Wilson for that reason. I mean, I think he's the Vegas favorite to be drafted first. And I think if you're just saying I want to minimize risk and maybe get a guy that is not going to flame out, I think he's probably your safest pick. But you made a good point that we have Dallas and Buffalo also in the 20s, Green Bay, Kansas City with 2 picks, the Chargers. Like there's a lot of these super efficient situations where if a receiver goes there, it's going to bring their conversation up to, is this guy the wide receiver 1? Is this guy the wide receiver 2? You know, because we're going to probably see Garrett Wilson, or like you could see a realistic scenario where Garrett Wilson and Drake London are with the Jets and the Saints, and then all the other receivers go to those other spots. And now it's, what's the old saying? For receivers, you usually want to lean into the talent versus the situation, but it's going to be real hard for you to turn down like George Pickens to the Packers, isn't it? I mean, it just is. It's going to be hard for you to say, I'm not going to take him over Drake London to the Jets.
Oh no, I already know I'm making this mistake. If George Pickens goes to Kansas City, there's absolutely no way he's not going to be my wide receiver 3 at worst, and he shouldn't be my wide receiver 3. But you know
Right.
what? My mind's going to go that offense, the landing spot. As much as we want to talk ourselves, you know, and want to remind ourselves that landing spot isn't always the most important thing. I'm going to go, oh, he's in the Kansas City offense and he has first round draft capital. It doesn't matter that he was the 7th wide receiver drafted in the class. It's 7th wide receiver drafted in this class. He's now my wide receiver 3.
Yeah, and I think it was Jordan McNamara that tweeted out that historically, like the wide receiver 1 usually goes off the board somewhere on average around like the 9th pick of the NFL draft. And this year it's likely going to be further back. Like it's likely going to be outside the top 10 potentially. Like we may not see the first receiver off the board until the teens. And really, that's not that different. A guy that gets picked at like wide receiver 1 that goes 16th overall, that's not crazy different from a receiver that goes like 25th. You know, it's not a huge gap. So if you're in a draft, you're kind of hoping for. So, I mean, I've said this before. I think we're going to see 7 receivers go in the first round because of the demand. It's the 2nd or 3rd most valuable position in the NFL. They're being paid that way. So it's actually a huge advantage to have good. If you can find stud receivers like the Bengals did, and they're both on rookie contracts, that's huge. I mean, yeah, it helps to have a quarterback on rookie contracts, but you don't think the Chiefs or the Bills would benefit by having a couple rookie receivers? Like, you don't think the Bills would benefit if they can ride out their number 2 and number 3, Gabe Davis and this rookie this year on rookie deals for the next 2 or 3 years? I mean, that will extend their contention window even when they have to start paying their quarterback a massive amount. So, you know, you can't retain receivers now on the open market for less than $20 million a year. You know, I mean, and do you really want to pay the Deebo Samuels of the world $28 million a year? I mean, or would you rather just draft George Pickens and see what happens? You know, I mean, so I think we're getting to that point. So I think it's going to push receivers up. And in rookie drafts, this is what you want. You want, in an ideal world, you want the top 3, the ones that were already mentioned. So Burks, Wilson, London. You want them to almost go in the teens, but not to the great spots. Then you want the NFL to draft 4 or 5 more guys in the next 20 picks, and they all go to Dallas, Buffalo, Kansas City, Green Bay. Then you're like, damn, I got like 8 receivers to choose from, and I really don't care which one I get. That way, if I'm picking at the 108 and the 110, I actually feel pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, I feel good about those spots if that happens. So, you know, I know everyone loves like Treylon Burks and they want him to go to like Dallas, or, you know what I mean? But maybe for the sake of our rookie draft values, it might be better to have 7 guys and the lesser ones fall to the good spots, and just brings more value to the picks. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. Garrett Wilson, look, Treylon Burks is the guy that like I drafted him first in a rookie draft that I was in. I was lucky enough to have a pick a couple picks later, and I also got Garrett Wilson. If given the choice again, and I only had 1 wide receiver I was allowed to draft in the rookie draft, right now it's going to be Garrett Wilson. And, you know, he's going to land with the Jets, and maybe I won't have to draft him first. So that'll be a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And that's the same thing. If you're going to stick with your situation, still fading the situation in lieu of the talent. If that happens, you're going to get some Garrett Wilson in the mid first, wide receiver 4 or 5 in drafts because people are going to take some of the other guys. So it's going to help you both ways. A couple more comments. Mark said, yo, what's up, guys? Rare occurrence finding you live. Yep. Appreciate that. Here was another one. Oh, David Sheehan. Thank you, David. 2 best Dynasty analysts in the game. Love it. Cheers to you as well. Here's one, Shane. Then I have another topic on the draft guide. DeAndre Swift or Breece Hall? You're on mute.
No, I wasn't. I was just talking with no words coming out. I mean, sight unseen with that now knowing where Breece Hall is going to land. I think I still like Breece Hall better. I like Breece Hall a lot, and I have for a while. And when people were trying to say that Isaiah Spiller was the running back one of this class for like those 3 weeks before the combine, I laughed at people. Just walked up to them and laughed at them, knocked on their door and laughed at them. Man, he could end up in such a bad situation. So it's bad process to trade to take Hall here. But here's the thing. I know people are falling in love with Kenny Walker because he keeps going off the board by 102 in one quarterback drafts too. I'm gonna make that trade, but Spida, I'm gonna cheat. They have to throw me something back. Whether it's a third this year, second next year, something to make me feel like I'm hedging my bets a little bit. I'm just going to take.
But does a second or a third move the needle for you in a single QB, given how far back they are?
No, but literally, it's for no other reason than to make me feel better that I got a second asset. Because the correct process move is probably just holding on to Swift here. We know what he is, right? He's valued as a top 5 dynasty running back. Me and you both believe that Breece Hall is going to be valued as a top 5 running back after the draft, but there's also the non-zero chance that someone like Jacksonville drafts him at 34 or wherever their pick is. You know what I mean? And then you go, oh, dear Lord, that there could not have been a worse landing spot. You know,
I mean, he could land in a smash spot to where we're dumping him all the way up to running back 2 in Dynasty. He could land in a spot literally. I mean, someone brought this up, but Jacksonville, Detroit, or Tennessee could take him, and you're like, how do we have him in a backfield with another top 15 running back? What do we do there? So I think it's a coin flip. He could be RB10 after the draft. He could be RB2. So you're kind of gambling, and it's, it sounds like Shane just wants to make sure that even if his date doesn't show up and ghosts him, at least he has like that ice cream in the freezer to come back home to, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like I'm all right being ghosted, but I need a little something to get me through the night once I was ghosted.
Yep. Well, here's one. Shout out Kyle Senra, Full Press Fantasy Podcast. All right, so this is a tough one. 2 copy league, Shane. 0.15 PPC. So 220 would be the 210, basically. Rashad Penny or the 210. I'm taking Rashad Penny all day, yeah?
Yeah, I'll take Rashad Penny there. We're hoping whoever we get at the 210 is going to give us what we saw from Rashad Penny the last 5 weeks of last year, right? Like you talked about a little earlier.
You're never the odds you get.
Well, that's
last
what I'm
5
saying.
Weeks from Rashad Penny at the 210 is you're hoping he just gives you a placeholder running back you could maybe use.
It's the dream, right? Because what you're more likely going to end up with is Zamir White, who I loved coming out of high school, but that doesn't really help right now because he's going to be a day 3 guy. So, yeah, I'll take Rashad Penny.
Yeah, looking at the latest ADP, here who would go at that spot. It's a perfect correlation. So the 210 is Brian Robinson. Would you take him over Rashad Penny? That's it. That's not horrible. I could see people taking Brian Robinson, but at the same time, I'd rather have Penny for exactly what you just said.
Yeah, and I think Brian Robinson is going to get better draft capital than a lot of people are expecting. So I'd be willing to take that bet. But yeah.
And in a PPC league, just the mindset that people have, he'll go higher than the 210. That'll be a guy that goes like at the top 4 or 5 pick in the second round at minimum if he gets the draft capital. So good question, Kyle. Appreciate it. I did want to touch on the draft guide. We did this last year in last year's draft guide, but we rebooted it again this year and did the Superflex strategy. So, I mean, not being critical here, but one of the sections in the Superflex strategy was the late quarterback approach, Shane. Can you take a late quarterback approach right now if you're doing a startup? Like it, are you confident enough to be able to pull that off if you're not just doing it just to have fun? Like, do you really think you can viably win if you do not have a single top 18 quarterback on your roster? Can you even win a league doing that?
I don't see how you can. And it's I just should just denote, so the strategy, we're not in the guide. It's not like we're saying this is what you should do. It's just, if this is the strategy, this is probably the best way going about it. But me and you are, I think, the innovators of trade absolutely everything to get back into the first round and have 2 top 5 quarterbacks, and then worry about every other position after that, to be quite honest with you. You could win. It's just the margins are going to be so thin. You're going to need to hit, if you go RB heavy, well, you're kind of really risky because it's a fragile position. If you go wide receiver heavy, I mean, as much as we like to think we know who the elite wide receivers are, we can, like I said, go through some of them and just know that they've dropped throughout the last couple of years. Whereas the quarterbacks, we know it's Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. I don't know why I was going to say Lamar Miller, Lamar Jackson, even Deshaun Watson. Now that he's not going to prison, I couldn't advise doing it. If you do it, I hope that you're trading back and getting a ton of future draft capital. Like, I just would hope that that's your strategy, is maybe it's a productive struggle year. And you're just going to boot the quarterbacks for this year and just pick up a ton of draft capital.
Yeah, I think so one of the major issues is when you're doing this, let's say you're doing a startup, even right after the NFL draft. So where all the rookie quarterbacks went. So that's going to factor in, kind of where the quarterback tiers stand for you. I think the problem is trying to execute the late quarterback approach. Is if I'm going to take that approach, I almost don't really want to pay anything for the quarterbacks that I'm getting, right? Does that make sense? Like, if I don't have a top 18 quarterback, it is such a flat range of scoring at that point. I don't even want quarterback 20 at quarterback 20 prices. I'm better off getting quarterback 30. So it truly is, you truly almost go, I'm punting quarterback. And I think if you punt quarterback, you have to have a reinforcement plan, like you said, like a productive struggle where you've picked up 2 or 3 future firsts, and you're just banking that next year, hey, I can drop some assets now. They can survive next year. Then I have a bunch of assets to play with and I'll reassess next year. But it kind of pushes you, if you draft a late quarterback approach, it kind of pushes you into an automatic productive struggle or tank year one. Because I don't feel confident enough if you tell me, okay, you're going to trade out of your first and second round pick, right? So I probably traded to somebody else that traded up and took 2 elite quarterbacks. 2 teams probably started with Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, and someone else started with, Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson. Like, I'm not going to probably beat those teams unless it's like 13 starters and I hit on all these other skill players, but we're drafting in May. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of fluidity with the skill players between now and then. I might think I'm getting all the better skill players, and then I pick wide receiver here, quarterback or running back here. I think I hit all the skill players. Then we get to August and it's like, well, my skill players aren't any better than the ones you took. And you have Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson, and I have Jimmy Garoppolo and Jameis Winston. So, like, I have to be so perfect at the other positions to beat you. I'm almost forced to say, okay, I need to take more shots because eventually I'm going to have to get the quarterbacks.
Yeah, and what's going to end up happening is all the picks that you picked up, the rookie picks that you accrued, you're going to trading them for a legit quarterback. Because I've tried, I like trying different strategies, and I've tried going, for me, late quarterback. I'll say like a Kirk Cousins would be my first off the board, and then maybe going into last year like a Daniel Jones, just to see, like, all right, what's this team look like? And I'll tell you what, after 1 year, I was like, nope, can't do this. All those rookie picks I just got, guess what? I'm going to give up 4 of these and go get Justin Herbert. You could always take the chance. Oh, well, maybe I'll get a rookie quarterback in the draft class. Well, let's look at this draft class. If you had 6 rookie picks in this class, you might think you got one future quarterback, Malik Willis, and that's not even going to be year 1. That's probably year 2. It's just so hard to chase that position after the fact.
Well, and then the other thing is part of what I wrote. I actually wrote the piece on the Superflex, the 1-2 combo, which is basically what we're talking about. Identify the quarterbacks you would say are in your comfortable tier of starting the 1-2 combo with, and go get them. And the two rules that I put in there was do not trade your 23 first, or in general, don't trade your future picks, and don't give away 4 startup picks to get 2. Just try to get an even number back, because there's a point in the draft, a lot of points in a draft in a startup, where it's really flat. You're going, okay, I have an extra 6th. Who cares about the guy that gets to pick in the 3rd? I feel just as confident because we're both going to be taking wide receivers. Or you're going to get RB8 and I'm going to get RB20. But I'm okay with that downgrade because I got the upgrade earlier. And then the other thing is, let's just say I tried a really late quarterback approach and I got Garoppolo and Winston, and maybe I got like a Mariota or something. Maybe I have a 3rd. If I have 2 extra 23 firsts, I'll just give this. Let's say I have 3 firsts going into next year, Shane. What am I praying for going into next year? That those picks are going to land in a place where maybe I can get the next 2 top quarterbacks next year, right? But all the pressure's on me to draft the quarterbacks next year. I don't like going into a rookie draft and go, great, I have 3 firsts, but guess what? I have 0 quarterbacks. Because now I'm pressured to reach on those quarterbacks wherever they are. I'm pressured to overpay if it becomes a clear 2 running backs, 2 quarterbacks in the top 4 next year, and all I have is the 103, the 106, and the 110. Well, guess who now has to pay extra assets to move up to get those 2 quarterbacks? And then what do I have? I'm praying either one of them becomes Russell Wilson. You know what I mean? Like I'm hoping they both become that. So you just feel like you're always chasing your tail. Whereas if I start with Justin Herbert and Dak Prescott, I feel pretty good that I'm going to have like 2 or 3 years where all I have to do is focus on adding skill players. I can just pick best skill player on the board every year in the draft. I don't care if it's a running back or a receiver. I'm never pressured to have to find that stud quarterback. And you said you've tried it before, and what do you ultimately end up doing? Man, I got 3 firsts and someone's offering me that for Justin Herbert. I just give up all my 3 firsts. And I'm like, it would have been easier to do that last year in the startup, right?
Yep.
So just that it's hard to do because everyone's doing this now in drafts. I do think the way you can get away with it is if you get 1 stud quarterback. I do think there are those bridge guys like the Derek Carrs, Kirk Cousins. Like you can get away with those guys as your second and not feel as pressured to have to pay up. But that's like the minimum. If I don't get at least 1 stud, I feel really, really rough about my future flexibility.
I will say there are those quarterbacks that people perennially just don't value correctly. So Kirk Cousins is my fallback. Like he's my guy. Like, all right, I'll just, if I'm not going to get to elite quarterbacks in the first round, you know what I mean? First 2 rounds, I'm probably not going to. I'll take Kirk Cousins in the 3rd or the 4th because people are going to let him drop every year. Yep. And they're just going to do it. And then they're going to compare Mac Jones to him to say, well, Mac Jones' ceiling is Kirk Cousins. And you have to explain to them, no, Kirk Cousins is quarterback 1, fellas. So it might not be Mac Jones' ceiling. And there's always 1 or 2 quarterbacks like that in every draft that the community just continually underrates and undervalues.
Yeah, and I think we do a very bad job of identifying who the next Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins is. Because quite frankly, every quarterback you can say, oh, if he can become Kirk Cousins, right? That's easy. And then you realize only like 1 out of 10 actually does. Yeah. And there's a lot of, bodies left in the wake of guys that didn't become that and you paid 1st round picks for. So, it's easier kind of just to buy the Kirk Cousins that is right now versus, hope that Kenny Pickett becomes that. So this was a quick question that kind of sticks on the same topic. Isco Alcaron said, trying to move up from Russ, Dak to Mahomes, Allen, Herbert. I'll keep it simple. I don't. If I have Dak and Russ and that's my quarterback combo, I'm fine with it. I'm not adding like firsts on top to go into that next tier. Just not my style. Unless I really, really am feeling frisky and I have to get like another Herbert share or something. But generally, like I'm not obsessed with moving from that 2nd tier of quarterbacks. If it's Deshaun, Russ, Burrow, Dak, Lamar, Kyler, like I don't really care to add to those guys to go up to the top 3. But that's just me.
Yeah, even me. And it's funny because Dak and Russ are probably the lowest of my QB1s, right? In my tiers. I still don't want to give up too much to move up. I mean, I might throw a bunch of stuff in the trade. I might throw a bunch of seconds in there. Like I'm fine throwing in a 2nd this year, a 2nd next year, 2024 2nd, like one of those where you're just throwing things. so that
Well,
the other owner feels like, all right, well, maybe I kind of have to take this.
we'll say you have a quarterback room of Dak and Russ. Would you trade that combo plus 223 firsts to get Allen and Herbert in your inbox? The other person gets 4 assets, you get 2. What side would you take? And I'm putting you on the spot because this is a classic example of the leverage.
I'd have to hold on to the side with the 23 first. I mean, and that could blow up in your face, right? Because 3 of those guys from next year's class could decide that they want to go see what it's like to be a senior, and 2 other guys could be hurt. And then the next thing you know, you have a 2022 class and you're like, damn it, I wish I made that trade. That's a lot of assets to give up for. I mean, I'd have to look at the scoring, but yeah, I can't see me doing that.
Well, because what could you do with those 23 firsts before you have to make the picks, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to be part of, and I haven't talked about this, I've just been buy 23 first for the last 3 years. But there is going to be a shift point when we get to this summer where I'm going to have to reassess a lot of my teams and go, okay, I do not want to go into next year holding my 23 first like a vice grip and never being refused to trade any of them, right? Like I don't want to hold every one of them and make every pick. But I think the idea is if you can go into the season with a bunch of extra 23 firsts, you can now wait for more information and say, okay, this is a team I'm willing to trade it. This is a team where I can maybe easily project that this is going to be outside the top 5. That's one of the firsts that I'm going to let go. But the idea of that trade, if you traded Dak and Russ and got 223 firsts and you just gave up Herbert and Allen, there's just so much flexibility and options that you have with those 2 firsts in the next 6 months. You could literally ride that to 2. You might be able to get like a Saquon Barkley and Dalvin Cook for those 2 picks. And that's even an overpay.
I will say this, though. If I have multiple 2023 firsts on my team and I have the Dak Russ room and someone's offering me Allen or Herbert, I might do that. If I've got multiple firsts, knowing that the process might not be great, but 3 points a week out of one position, and knowing it's a guy, Allen or Mahomes, that could give me a 45-point week. You know how I feel about those weeks. I absolutely love them. I love the variance and embrace it. But again, I'd have to have multiple 2023 firsts, and I don't know how many people have been able to pull that off since we've been talking about that class since I was about 4 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good conversation, but it's going to have to at some point shift back towards okay, I've been trading for these 23 firsts. Now what do I do? How do I actually make it worth my while? Because I think part of the bet is that they're going to be worth more in the season. And there's going to be strategic places where you go, okay, I'm going to trade my first in this league. Because I never thought that I would get 2 core starters for 1 single pick. But I can see people chasing that with the 23 class. You're just going to have to be willing to pull the trigger. You can't hold on to them and just be so obsessed with the prospects next year that you're just going to draft every player. Because, I mean, we're still going to be subject to some of the same hit rates that we've had in the past. So what else is on your mind, Shane? Had some other questions. I'll search and see if there's anything else that made sense. Anything did you see in the comments?
Let's see. We got a couple trade questions. That's always fun. We got Aaron Jones plus a 2023 first or CMC and the 212 contending. Yeah, I'm taking Aaron Jones in the 2023 first by a pretty significant margin. I know what CMC can do when he's healthy, but I told this story before. Generally, running backs don't, or really no players come back from 2 straight years of being severely injured to just going back to being the best at their position like they used to be. I know that he was elite and put up some of the greatest running back seasons in fantasy, but I don't think he's that guy anymore.
Well, and it's interesting that the question came in with McCaffrey, Aaron Jones, because I mean, Aaron Jones has a top 3 season and a top 5 season. Like he's one of the few that you would say you'd pivot off of that is depressed in value that has multiple top 5 seasons. We're not talking about a perennial RB 18 here. You know what I mean? Like Aaron Jones has 60 reception upside. I mean, is he going to be able to do that now compared to 3 years ago? Maybe not, but I think he's actually, that's an intriguing pivot. And when you ask me a question like that, and I immediately want to go, hey, can I go make that trade? Like that's when that one really intrigues me. So I love that one. I did see another one in here that was, it was a rookie draft trade. Let's see, here it was. Trading at the 206 to move up from the Sky Moore David Bell range up to the Chris Olave, George Pickens range. Yeah, and I'm not even sure you get David Bell, Sky Moore at the 206 in a single quarterback. I think they may even get pushed
I
up
think they're
more.
gone. I'm sure that Sky Moore is gone.
Late first in some single quarterback drafts, I'm guessing, just with the receivers. I mean, so let me ask you this: in a one quarterback league, which is admittedly not our forte, but it's really the difference between Superflex and one quarterback is just math. It's positional leverage and math. So you have a 206. You're trying to turn that 206 into a viable, top 7 or 8 receiver in this class. It sounds like that's what he's trying to do. Would you add a 23 first to your 206 in a single quarterback league to move up and get a top 6 or 7 receiver in this class?
No,
Nope. Okay.
no, and no.
Just too much equity with that 23 first on paper to give it away in this kind of deal.
Yep, I'm fine with moving, trading the 206. Worth trading at the 206 to move up, as long as it's not a 23 first you're throwing in there. If you're throwing in another second and you can move up to get Olave or Pickens, I'm good with that. Olave is going to be one of the first wide receivers off the board, and Pickens everywhere he's mocked to is in that, again, that what's that range? I don't know what it's like, the hospitable zone where, things can live. I think that's what they call planets. He's in that range of like those teams where they can make a wide receiver super relevant if they're decent. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think single quarterback leagues are difficult because there's not the same equity in the future picks. There is if you hit on one of the top 3 or 4. It really falls off if you end up, 110, 111, 112. So I do think in single quarterback leagues, people are much more often like, well, I'm a playoff team. I'm going to trade away that 112 because the 112 in a lot of single quarterback leagues is, who cares? But a lot of times you make that deal thinking you're going to be the 112 and then, oops, things went wrong. It's the 104, So I kind of agree with you. I would hold that. I would hold the 23 first just because I think there's going to be better opportunities of things that I can do with it. You see any other trade questions you wanted to put up?
Goldilocks zone. Thank you, Kyle Sender. That's what it's called, the Goldilocks zone. That's what the planet has to be in a certain part of a universe to be able to sustain life.
Yeah.
Rob,
this was a good point. Crimson Wazoo. Yep. Get way better with the 23 first on in-season deals. I agree. Yeah. I think that's part of the reason to accumulate them is you accumulate them in the off season and you just hope that you're going to have those, okay, I'm desperate offers to you in the season. So love that point. What else? Here was one. I know where you're at on this one because you don't even think Bateman's worth a first.
This hurts because I love Bateman coming out last year, right? And I can make the excuses. And technically, well, I don't know what the 17-game threshold for yardage is for hits now because, well, last year was the first 17-game season. But we could probably figure it out based off 16-game seasons and just adding a game to it. A lot of math that I'm not going to do. In a super flex, I'm going to take the 108 and hope with all of my heart that, because it's super flex, that a couple people draft Kenny Pickens, Matt Corral, and I don't know, Sam Howell, and maybe I can get one of the top 3 wide receivers that I really like.
Yeah, I mean, I did really loose research last year on the guys that come into the league as early declares and what you kind of want the baseline for their future value to be from a PPR standpoint. 16 games. I mean, basically you're going to see 16 games now from players in fantasy because it's a 17-game season and week 18 is typically, a non-fantasy week. But it was like around 160 points. If you have a rookie receiver that's an early declare that gets 160 points in a season, their value track is pretty good going forward. If you're less than that, it doesn't mean you can't be good. And obviously, that's a 16-game season, 160 points. That's 10 points per game per se. So, I mean, Bateman falls short of that, but I don't think he falls short enough to say he's not any good. You know what I mean? But he clearly doesn't. He doesn't fall short of if someone offers you a reroll and you can end up getting the wide receiver 3, like Shane said. I think that's a viable move. And giving up the 23 second, that's just the tax you have to pay to get off of the player that you've already seen. Everyone wants the brand new shot, that they haven't seen before. So you're paying a tax.
And just real quick on those 23 seconds, because you've brought this up before and I brought this up before. I know the 23 class is elite, guys, but that doesn't make the second round actually that elite. It's just more that the top 12 guys in that draft are all going to be stud muffins, as opposed to, oh my God, there's 30 players in this draft that would have been first round draft picks the previous year. They're still second round picks. They're still going to have the same type of hit rates that past second round picks have had. And that's very mostly miss.
I mean, I love the 23 class, but if I get to spots during this year, second, third, fourth round, where I want a player, I have a specific roster where I want a running back, and for some reason I really want, insert whoever you want, Devontae Price. I want him on my team. I'm fine giving up a 23 third for the 310 to draft that guy. It's usually going to be running backs. Like, I'm going to use my extra picks in future years to backfill running backs, but I'm not looking at 23 seconds and thirds. Like, those are going to be stud players too. I think it drops off at a certain point to where they're dollar for dollar the same. Yeah, I don't mind giving up a 23 second for a player that I want this year. Doesn't mean I'm going to want a lot of players in the second, but I'm not going to not do it because the class is better. I think when we're saying better class, we're meaning like top 10 to 15 picks, and then it drops off. Here was one. Go accept before we even take the comment off, right? 23 first and 109 for Derek Carr.
Dude,
accept it.
Go ahead, accept.
Yep, go do it. All right. What else, Shane? Almost at an hour. We'll go 4 more minutes. Well, anything you want to talk about if you don't see a topic?
I was just going to pimp the guide some more. You guys, yourself, Addison, John Hesterman.
Jeff Smith. Yep.
All did just phenomenal work on write-ups. I got some write-ups in there too, but you guys all did great work. There's sleepers in there because we like talking about sleepers. There's players we think will bust. There's values, there's all that fun stuff. There's strategy. I think it's a pretty good mix between strategy and player focus type stuff. And remember, we're going to be updating it as I can't wait till the draft comes, to be quite honest with you, and go back into that bad boy and just tear it up and just update it left and right. But no, just check out the guide. The guide was awesome, and I'm really proud of the work that the team did on it.
Agree. Echo all those sentiments. I won't add anything more to it. We'll leave it on this, Shane. You have 30 seconds, or I'll give you 60 seconds. 60 seconds. Give the listeners one piece of strategy you think they should be doing before the NFL draft with their dynasty teams. They have about 3 weeks.
I mean, my strategy is always the same, right? I would say get rid of the old running backs. But you know what? This might be the year to actually buy the older running backs for the 2022 picks. I just saw a question in one of our patron chats where someone said, would you give up the 103 for Joe Mixon? Yes, because the 103 is probably Kenneth Walker. Can Kenneth Walker be a good running back in the league? Maybe. I've never seen him catch a pass in his life. I'm sure he has. But I know Joe Mixon is a top 15 running back at worst. So this might be the year. Look, and this is completely against what we preach, but if you're going to pivot a little bit your strategy, this might be the year to go ahead and trade some of these rookie picks for older running backs.
Yep. With a caveat, don't do it if you already have 3 running backs.
Yeah, no, don't do it. Don't do it just to do it. That's just silly.
Yeah, it's not a value thing. It's a construction thing. Hey, if you're a running back, you think a running back away from being a contender and it fits your construction, yeah, I have no problem paying first this year for future running backs. I would say my piece of advice would be free up roster spots. This is for as bad as this class is, this is a great class. There are 50% more prospects in total in this year's draft than there are in prior drafts. There's just a lot of interesting profiles. Most of those are day 3 running backs and athletic tight ends, and then just a lot of mush. But I want players in this class. I want day 3 players in this class. I want 3rd and 4th round picks in this class. So shed your roster. Look at your roster. I've been doing that for the last month on teams, just going, okay, why am I holding James Washington? He could be the number 2 or 3 receiver on Dallas, but why am I holding him? Oh, you'll give me the 401? Okay, fine. If I'm penciling him in as ever needing to use him on my team, I should probably reassess with what I'm doing with my team. So just free roster spots. Identify who are the roster cloggers, free up spots, get late picks. That's my advice. That's it, Shane. An hour. Another Manic and Chill in the books. I love you, man.
We need to do these more often.
Yeah, that's what we always say. And then it's like, oh, hey, it's July. We haven't done one since April. Oh, maybe we'll get another one done in before the NFL draft. Who knows? Maybe it's not like we don't have each other's phone numbers and we can't say, "Hey Shane, you want to do a Manic and Chill?" This one, I mean, when did this one manifest? About 6:30 p.m. tonight.
It was closer to 7:30, I think,
Okay, yeah.
because I was laying on the sofa debating whether I was going to go to bed. So yeah.
Cool. Well, check out the draft guide. I mean, this was meant to be kind of a Q&A plus a draft guide show. On the DLF website, click on draft guide. There's 2 draft guides in there. Updates will be coming. Shout out to Addison, Jeff Smith, John Hesterman, Shane, the partners, myself for putting it together. Appreciate all the subscribers and listeners, and be chill, everybody.